For the Canadian Literature class presentation, I have decided to narrow down my focus into my chosen text. My focus will be on the short story Immigrant City, the first short story in the novel Immigrant City by David Bezmozgis. The reason why I have chosen to talk about this short story is because, as a first-generation Canadian, I find myself relating to one of the main points that the work makes. Despite immigrants' past notions, they strive towards adaptation and embrace change. The story revolves around a first-generation Canadian man who takes residence in Toronto with his family. His seek out to purchase a used passenger side door for his car starts with him crashing his car while backing out of a tight parking spot, an event that starts with self-recrimination but transpires into a journey of emotional encounters. In Immigrant City, David Bezmozgis makes the point that despite the influence the past has on a person of immigrant background, within them there lies an unstoppable force to adapt in order to move on and move forward. After searching on the internet, the protagonist finds a seller, Muhammad, a Somali Muslim man. He meets up with him to purchase the door, an event accompanied by the protagonist's 4-year-old daughter, Nora. He says, "I confided to Muhammad that I too had been an immigrant boy, that my father had garbled the English language, that my mother had cooked chicken drumsticks, which I had eaten, often cold." Muhammad nodded. Fraternal understanding passed between us. Despite Muhammad's and the protagonist's instant forming of connection, when Muhammad says that in order to see the door they have to go upstairs to his uncle's, the protagonist's sense of paranoia escalates. He says, "The mind descends quickly to dank depths. Muhammad had never mentioned an uncle before. I thought, if I am dismembered upstairs, what will happen to Nora? Or what if upstairs is merely a ruse? Muhammad's wife and children seemed harmless and kind, and I hadn't forewarned Muhammad that I was bringing my daughter. But what did I know of Somali folks?" He later explains that this phobia of strangers and people whose difference seems unfamiliar is rooted in the fact that when he was a baby in Soviet Latvia, a gypsy woman had once walked off with his unattended stroller, an event that had happened to his father as well. Despite the protagonist's mind's descent into dank depths, as he puts it, he tries to prevent the genuine spiritual communion formed between him and Muhammad from going to waste, and decides to go upstairs while Nora waits with Muhammad's wife. The reason why this passage is important in proving Bezmozgis' point that immigrants have a powerful force of adaptability within them is because it shows how, despite the protagonist's presumptions, which are based on experiences in his home country, he is able to push his logic beyond his preconceptions in order to adapt and seek new opportunities for developing a better mindset. After the deal goes well and the protagonist comes down to pick up Nora, he sees that she is wearing a hijab, which was given to her as a present by Muhammad's wife. The protagonist says, "I thought of how one might explain to a 4-year-old the raft of complicated, legitimate, and paranoid reasons that militated against her wearing her gift in public." However, almost immediately, he reconsiders his position and says, in the end, it didn't matter. In an immigrant city, a city of innumerable struggles and ambitions, a white man with a car door and a daughter wearing a blue hijab attract less attention than you might expect. People, after all, are immersed in their devices and concerns. This is an important passage because it explains that immigrants are so invested in their own challenges that their preconceptions and paranoia ultimately go to the side. Go home and keep going. Nora says this to the protagonist on the bus back from Muhammad's after purchasing the door. I interpret this particular passage as a metaphorical way of giving voice to the juxtaposing and entangled feelings that live within an immigrant. While there is an undeniable desire to look back at one's home country and past notions, and to think you might even return one day, the idea to keep going seems to be as convincing, if not overriding that feeling. In Immigrant City, by challenging the reader to place themselves in an immigrant's shoes, David Bezmozgis creates an immersive read where you're left with intertwined feelings. While immigrants can never fully let go of their past lives, they wholeheartedly strive towards adaptation and overcoming the arising challenges for pertaining a sustainable life in their new world. Thank you for listening.